A little bit different format today because we got a guest at the top of the show. Former Gamecock offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, coach to the New York Guardians, championship level coach at Delaware Valley College. Hell of a ball coach, good guy, G.A. Mangus. Welcome into the show.
Good to be here, guys.
Morning.
Right off the top, you look around the SEC, GA, and back, I guess, five or so years ago, I sat there and thought, well, which one of these Big 12 offenses could you bring into this league and make it work? And I always kind of looked around and thought Art Briles' system at Baylor was good. And now you look in the league, and there's three schools kind of running variations of it, including his son Kendall this weekend for Arkansas. It's all kind of the same thing, but they're different. Heupel runs a little bit differently at Tennessee. Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin and the Levy influence there. And then Arkansas, just from your standpoint, what are your thoughts about that offensive system and what it brings to the table and, how these guys have been able to be successful with it in this league so far?
Well, I think it's being a tempo guy, myself and kind of where my background comes from. I think it's all about the tempo and what they do. And, Kendall, they seem to run the ball a little bit more versus, maybe the quarterback run or just the tailback runs. It's all a variation, like you said. And I think that's everybody, but the tempo is what creates the problems. And, no matter where those tempo guys have been, it's created problems for anybody they play. And just because it's in the SEC, we went to some tempo things back in with Connor and going on 15 years ago now, almost, and no huddle and some things. And again, I go back all the time and people ask me about what makes Coach Spurrier great. And he was always willing to change and was always looking to things that could help improve anything. And even an offense that was as successful as his for so long, in the Florida days, he knew that there had to be something change and something different to be successul. And when we had a lot of tempo, we didn't go quite as fast as those guys do, where they do all the time. But that was something that was new here that we did and had a lot of success with that ourselves. So I think all those guys know what they're doing. They know how to call it fast. It's just a matter of their philosophy of whether they like to throw it, run it with the tailback, run it with the quarterback. And Arkansas, has that, KJ seems to be the total dual threat guy. And when those guys can do it and you do it fast, boy, it's a headache for defensive coordinators.
Yeah, it looks that way definitely with Arkansas. Tennessee, I think, turned their whole deal around last year just by going fast. And they go, that Pitt game this weekend, I'm really looking forward to it because I think there's going to be maybe 80 points scored up there at Heinz Field. I don't call it by the new name. I'm never going to. I'm just going to call it Heinz Field. Okay, so Coach Spurrier, you mentioned that about him being kind of innovative and willing to change. You were around down there in '96, right? When the Gators went to the Sugar Bowl, got in after losing to Florida State the first time. Doesn't the story go that he was willing to get in the shotgun all of a sudden, and that was kind of the difference in that ball game when Florida won the national title?
It was, they had a great defense, and the game a month before, a lot of people, of course, young people wouldn't even probably remember it, but that was the back-to-back games in a month, and played them again for the national title and in New Orleans, and the way some things worked out back before the playoffs and all that some things had to happen, and Jake the Snake Plummer, who young people have no idea who that is, but they pulled an upset. Pulled an upset, and the next thing you knew, we were playing for the national title against Florida State. And the previous game, we had gotten beat in a close one, but a lot of their pressure was great. They had great defensive pressure and great defensive teams back in those days. Every year there was something, and that just Danny was taking a lot of shots and a lot of hits, and a month later, put in that shotgun and didn't change the offense, just kind of took it out of the gun, and that was kind of the first time really that Coach had done it. People made a big deal about it because it got in the shotgun, and 1996. Now it's amazing. Now 25 years later, now if you go under center, it's like, what are you doing? What is that? You can't go down taking a knee out of the shotgun, which is like a pet peeve of mine. I'm not going to lose 4 yards on total offense because I take a knee
out of the shotgun.
Yeah, but yeah, it happened, and it was a good thing, and it led to obviously a really good night for the Gators, I think.
Definitely, yeah, it was about 52-20 down there in New Orleans, and that was a good moment. I mean, I kind of pulled for Florida the previous year when they played Nebraska, and I was shocked at that game. I mean, I think everybody was, but Spurrier always said that was probably one of the best teams he ever coached against, that Nebraska game. And
yeah, I would say the same. I mean, that's one of the great football teams in college history.
I mean,
there's no doubt about that. They were tremendous.
Exactly. Okay, so you were able to coach at South Carolina. Steven Garcia, you got there and you had Steven 09. Then it went to Connor and then Dylan Thompson. All those guys are decorated, right? Do you think that maybe Steven Garcia, because I looked it up, I think sometimes the fans, and this is nothing against Connor or Dylan. I mean, those guys' names are on the stadium, right? Steven went 4-1 against Clemson in Georgia. And that one game he lost, I remember you guys were driving, firing at the end zone at the end down in Athens. He won the East. I'll never forget that night in Gainesville when 36-14. You think maybe sometimes Steven is a little underrated considering – right after him, there was Connor, who rarely lost, rarely threw an interception and all that. And then Dylan set the single season record in 2014. Do you think maybe sometimes like Steven isn't as maybe celebrated as he should be? I mean, just based on, forget the off the field stuff, just based on wins and accomplishments and, what he did.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's anything. And you look at life when there's so many in the world we live in, where distractions tend to kind of take away sometimes from the truth, right? And the truth is that Steven Garcia was a really good player for us. That got better, won some big games. He was tough. He was as good and great as Connor was as a dual threat player. Steven had some dual threat as well. He just ran differently. He was packing 235 back in those days, and ask safety there at Florida.
Will Hill will never forget Steven Garcia.
Will Hill, when he thinks of that 235 packing on the goal line. And so, I think that's kind of what happens. And then time, there's been, and we had such great years and finished in the top 10 3 straight years. And Connor was such a great leader and a great player and a great, but there wasn't a lot of distractions, right? Everything was football and all anybody had to talk about with Connor was football. And so, I think that's part of it, but Steven's very comfortable with where he's at. I stay in touch with all those guys, play golf with Connor and have stayed in touch with the other guys quite a bit. And he's very comfortable with where he's at, where he's at and what people think because he doesn't care. He really doesn't. But he was a really good player. And I think when people go back and watch some of those games, I mean, forget Alabama. Alabama was great, but that night in the Swamp, he played really, really well and had some critical third down conversion plays and with people running at him. And I think he deserves everything he gets.
Yeah. I was just thinking like that. And so toward the end, you got Perry Orth and you guys, when Sean took over for the 6 games there at the end, I always tell everybody like that team appeared to be dead in the water before Coach Spurrier, retired or resigned or whatever. But you guys somehow, I mean, and I know the Citadel aside, right? You guys played Texas A&M off their feet, Tennessee off their feet. That Clemson game, bad call, Hey, there's my fiance telling you hello, GA.
Hey, Matt.
He's a big fan. She's a big fan. And really, I thought despite the record, that team got better as the season went on with Perry at quarterback and the offense. And what was kind of the secret there? Because it wasn't an offense that was scoring and going up and down the field, but by the end there, you guys went up and down the field on the national runners up, and Debo Samuel had a breakout game. Jarrell Adams turned into a terrific target. What was kind of the secret there? Because there's lots to talk about Sean Elliott, obviously, because he coached a game in Columbia Saturday, and he's coaching a game in Atlanta this weekend. A lot of Gamecocks wanted to win. But what was that secret for that team? Because that team really, I think, with the way they played, kind of laid the groundwork for Will coming in and eking out that bowl season in 2016.
Yeah, we had a lot. I'd tell people this, but when they a lot about those kids, the players get all the credit for that. They were, that was a tough situation, and anybody that's ever coached in those situations, when you have a firing or whatever, and not in this case, but in just any kind of situation happen where you kind of have you're a lame duck situation. It happens every year in pro football, college football, and all the way down. And it's a tough deal. It's a tough deal for coaches. It's a tough deal for players. I think everybody handled it very well, very professionally. But most importantly, the players, they kept grinding, they kept playing. And I think that had been from the precedent had been set over the past few years where we had won, and that was the standard. Of winning and competing and having a chance to compete for the SEC championship, which, for a 4-year run, we were right there. A little break here or there, or a bad break that went against us here or there, or whatever. Who knows what those could have turned into? But I think those kids have been there, done that. Perry, Perry took it upon himself. Perry was a kind of a quiet, confident kid. Underneath that look, he was a competitor, and those the A&M game was, he ran for almost 100 yards, scored and ran a touchdown down there. We implemented some stuff, a lot of tempo, those over those last 6 games, and he played. Hayden Hurst came out, all of a sudden he got a couple of big long drag routes that went big, and he got his coming out party, and Jarrell, we had really good tight ends. Those everybody, contrary to some of the 6 months after that when the cupboard was bare, I dare to differ on that. I don't think it was quite as bare as some people think, but we played. They gave everything they could give, and some of those teams were just, we just came up a little short in those. And obviously the Citadel game, that after that Florida game, it was, I think the writing was on the wall of everything, what was going on. That was real tough on the kids, but then to turn around and battle back and would have loved to have had about 3.5 or 4 more minutes on that last one. Because there was some tight, what's running around that ballpark that were not wearing garnet and black.
Yeah, that was a heck of a game. I remember I actually left early and went to the Pizza Man on Rosewood, and went with my ex-girlfriend. She was a Clemson fan, so I had to get out of there. Right, I was like, I got it. And we had terrible seats. We were like right under, back near the corner of the end zone, under a. Yeah, it was bad. And then that Perry run at Texas A&M, I always tell the story. I was in a bar in Greenville watching it. It was a noon kickoff. So, and I sat there. I answered it. Perry goes around the edge, right? I answered a text. I took a sip of beer. I looked up at the TV. He's still running. I looked around, took another sip of beer, and looked at my phone again, and he's still running. It was like, time-wise, it was the longest 70-yard run in the history of college football, only to be outdone by Damani Staley's pick 6 at East Carolina last year. But that was something else. I'll never forget that play as long as I live. So South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, you play quarterback, you coach quarterbacks, quarterbacks. Your assessment of him and kind of his first outing for the Gamecocks the other night. Certainly the arm talent's there, and what do you think the keys are for him to kind of keep progressing and taking it to the next level?
Well, it's a new system. It's a new deal. I mean, I think everybody's well aware of Spencer and his talent level. A couple of years ago, I mean, he was in the short list of Heisman candidates, at one time in his career there at Oklahoma. So, he's got talent, was a, highly recruited, highly decorated high school player coming out and had some great moments at Oklahoma. And coming in here, that gets his feet wet. It's a new league. It's going to be different. Anybody that has coming, I think with this portal, these guys that are coming in from these other leagues, I think they get eyes wide open pretty quickly, realizing the speed difference, and most importantly, as an offensive player, that those guys up front are just a little bit different in the SEC, and that's just the way it is. And anybody that denies that across the country, I know they get sick and tired of SEC bias and all that stuff from us that live down here, us country folk in the South. But it's a fact. It's a fact. And someone, myself, who's coached all over the country and seen that and had been in the league, out of the league as a player, a coach. That's the difference. That's where it really differs, and that's an adjustment period for anybody that's coming in from outside. And I think he's more than capable of doing that. And this week will be the first SEC test. Last week I just think was a whole brand new deal. Those first games you just never know what's going to happen with those after a whole year. So I wouldn't put too much on that. I think this will be the litmus test this weekend. It'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, your first year in 2009, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but your first year in 2009, you guys scored 7 points at NC State.
Yeah.
And the next weekend lit Georgia like a Christmas tree. It's 37 points, and you fire, like I said, fired at the end zone at the end to win.
Yeah, and that was Stephen was. I don't want to say switching systems because our passing game was predominant, but we had gone no huddle. There was just a lot of newness to it, and they had a pretty good quarterback themselves up there in Raleigh at that time. And that was one of those first games you just wanted to get through it, and we got through it, and you come out victorious. And I think when that happens, something like that happens, I think that's when you hear the old cliche. I'm not huge on the cliche because everybody's always says that, you get better, but before week 1 and week 2, you just get better all year. Our teams, those teams we had with Connor and Steven starting it, and Connor and Dylan, we got better as the season went, especially those 3 years. Our best football was in November. And I think as a coach, I know Coach Spurrier always preached that. And I think if you asked him, he would be very proud of that. We won the bowl games, we won the big games in November and got better. And I think that's all you want to do. So you'd like to get better all season. But if you escape that week 1, that normally that kind of takes the pressure off a little bit. Have a good week of practice, and you come out and play really well. And we just came up. We played really well compared to what we did again at NC State the next week. So
definitely, yeah, that was something else. That 2009 season was actually laid some groundwork there. Jamie Bradford says hello here on the Nana's Porch chat box to you, GA. He'd be mad at me. He'd be mad at me if I didn't put it up. Yeah. So that's good. A lot of respect around Gamecock land for you. So you recruited the Northeast at South Carolina with success. On my birthday last year, I'm sitting there watching the Bears and the Seahawks, and where I live, the Bears are huge, right?
Yep.
And I see a guy catch a 4th down winning touchdown. It's Damiere Byrd. going up in traffic and getting it, man. You recruited the Northeast with success at South Carolina. This staff looks like they're doing it, especially around the DMV, Delaware, up into Pennsylvania. In your experience up there, selling the University of South Carolina, which you did with success, what's the key up there to doing it and to making things happen? Because that's been a big storyline with the current staff recruiting with Pete Limbo going up there and kind of laying some tracks.
Well, I think first and foremost, recruiting is and always will be about relationships. No matter what NIL, portal, all these new terms and new things. I know myself, who knows what the next 15, 20 years will bring in anybody's career. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, much less 20 years. But with all the stuff, it's always about relationships with high school coaches, parents, families, kids. I still think the best recruiters and your best teams, if that is your philosophy, if high school coaches and the player's family, immediate family that's the relationship built, then those kids are going to build the relationships in the locker room, which is going to have the team that you need to have when you go out on the field to win. And that's what our team in those years was very close. They were very close. They all did everything together all the time. And I think that was because that was our philosophy in recruiting, and everybody was on the same page of that. And so the relationships were built. And in the Northeast, when I first went up there, I was the first time I crossed the Mason-Dixon line in my life was 1994. I'd never been there. I didn't know anything about the damn place. I thought New Jersey was New York City. The whole place was New York City. Little did I know that Demir Bird was from the blueberry capital of the world in South Jersey. There's nothing but farmland. And I got Bill Cubitt was my head coach at Widener University, and he gave me a map. Back in those days, we didn't have phones. We didn't have maps and all that. He gave me a map. I had a map and said, "Here, you have the state of New Jersey." And I couldn't took me 2 weeks to figure out you couldn't make a left-hand turn. You had to take jug handles. I didn't know what a jug handle was. Never heard of it. And 26 years old and didn't know what a damn jug handle was. But I got to know those people. And again, they're no different than us down here. You just have to it takes a little bit longer to know them. Trust me, my wife's one of them. And you once you do and you get under that, we're all the same. But the relationships build up there in the 11 years that I coached at Widener or Sinus College and the head coach at Delaware Valley. I made a lot of relationships. I know a lot of people. I still play a lot of golf up there. I go up there. My wife's family's from up there. And I got to know Pete Limbo back in those days. He was at Lehigh back in those days when I was coaching, and we talked some ball together. They went to Elon, and he came down to South Carolina when I was there, and brought his staff, and they came down and spent some time with us in spring. So he knows all those people from his connections up there in Lehigh Valley. And as we know, there's good players. You're not going to make a living off of it at South Carolina, but you still have kids. My niece just graduated from Philadelphia. She fell in love with the place when we were coaching here. And my family came down. She fell in love with it when she was 10 years old, called South Carolina her dream school. And she graduated in May. So that tells you what winning and having a good time in those years did for little 10-year-olds at the time. It made quite an impression. So you can get good players down here from that area. They like it. And I think that's been proven here over the last handful of years.
All right, final question here with G.A. Mangus here on Inside the Gamecocks, the show. All right, Barry Odom's defense, like it's a 3-2-6, I guess. I'm kind of confused about it. I know that in the past with you guys' offense, when teams drop a lot of defensive players, it can be problematic for your passing game. How do you counteract that?
Well, first and foremost, you got to run the ball. You got to prove you can run the ball. In my opinion, if they're going to drop 8, that's typically through the years. It's been what? It's a long yardage. You normally see it on third long, and they want to drop 8. What they've done now with these different kinds now, these dime packages, what have you, with all these kids that are hybrid safety types, they can disguise it because they all have a skill set to be able to sometimes cover, sometimes blitz, sometimes in the run fit, sometimes not in the run fit. And it's it can be difficult to figure out, but if you can run the football and make sure that they have those guys committed, that's kind of the a la what Iowa State's been doing is a little bit of a version of it. They have I call it an umbrella coverage, and then who's in the fit, who's not in the fit in the run fit. So it presents some challenges, and it'll be interesting to see how they attack it this week and what they come up with. It's not. I think it's more. It's a good defense mainly because it's different. It's kind of like anybody else. Back in the day when everybody played 4 down, I was a 3-4 guy. I went out to the Pittsburgh Steelers and learned the Pittsburgh Steeler fire zone 3-4 because nobody in our league played 3-4. So I wanted to be everybody had to play us. They had to adjust and scheme up against a 3-4 that they didn't see every other week. So I think right now this deal is something that you don't see weekly, and it makes you work extra hours. So we'll see how it works out. It's always fun to watch it as a coach. I always enjoy to see the chess match and how it's figured out or not figured out over a week.
All right. That's a great answer. Thanks so much for joining us, GA. And I hope that this isn't the last time. And hope you next time you play golf, you shoot really well, man.
It'll be tomorrow. I appreciate it.
Take care, Coach.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Y'all have fun.